There was work to be done. It didn't work.
So good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning.
And did you have a good night's sleep, or?
Not
Yeah.
No.
No, you don't sleep at all.
Oh well.
Yeah, that sometimes happens. Because the exercise we're doing, they gradually give a quickening of energy. And that kind of has an influence on the nerve system. And with some of us that means that we really have a difficulty to sleep, and other people sleep like a baby, better as ever. So there is a little bit of a polarization going on sometimes, and especially when we go to the second or the third day. So it's nothing to worry about. Eventually you will sleep. Yeah, we have a little bit of fear when we don't sleep that we are not able to manage the day, and that everything will go wrong. But basically we can really trust our body and our nerve system. At a certain moment you will fall asleep and the body will take over. It will take care. Unless there is a deeper reason for not being able to sleep. And then it will be really not only in the course but in a very long period. But I don't think that's going on with you.
Thank you for your reassurance.
That will not start in a course. Then, yeah. Okay, this morning I will start a morning talk. Yesterday Georgie started the morning talk. And today I like to share a little bit of information about the different layers of our makeup. And when you talk about the different layers of our makeup, basically what we're doing is that we're taking ourselves a little bit apart, because in the end we are just our one being. But it's like looking to the different organs we have and say, okay, this organ has more this function and that organ has more that function, but we don't function with most of the important organs. If we don't have them, if we have no heart, the body will not function. And this is the same with the different layers of our makeup. What I mean by it is the different bodies we have. That's another way to explain it. So the first well-known body we have is the physical body. And our physical body, when you look at it, is built of molecules. The molecules are composed of atoms. And nowadays science is really looking deep into the atoms and what are the building stones of them, and in the end what we come to is it's built of energy. It's energy in a very specific configuration which is creating the illusion of a physical existence. And this illusion of this physical existence for us is absolutely real. So what's important to know is if you look into the body, and into molecules and atoms, is that molecules and atoms, they're 99.9% empty. Nothing is containing so much empty space as our physical existence, or the physical existence around us. It's the most empty. Energy has more density as physical. And I try to explain it later when we go to the different layers of our makeup. Because the physical is so empty, energy is able to move through the physical. That means all the energetic layers we consist of are moving through each other and are moving through the physical. And in a way we know this is not new. If we want, and if you are used to use your sensitivity, if you want, you can feel the wall and the atmosphere of the wall. But very easy, you can move with your sensitivity through the wall and feel the atmosphere of what is behind the wall. So, with our sensitivity, which is more energetic when you feel things outside yourself, I'll explain later what exactly you are using. It's very easy to kind of to move through physical objects. And maybe we don't do this so consciousness, but subconscious, we are using our sensitivity all the time like this. We think about our mother, how is our mother doing? And we reach out. We get an impression, a feeling of it. And that's moving, sometimes to half the planet. It's not a problem. If you think about a holiday you had in Australia and you pick up the atmosphere of the place you were, you can have an impression of the atmosphere how it is right now, not how it was last year. We basically do this all the time when we're phoning to somebody who's on another continent and we talk to the person. There is this bridge in sensitivity that we feel what's behind the words of the other person. So we literally are able to move very easy with our sensitivity through physical objects, to space and time. And there is no distance. When you talk to a good friend who is in New Zealand, it's like, and after a while there's like no distance, there's a togetherness you feel. You feel the emotions, the feelings of the other person after a while. You can attune to the person as if you're sitting together. You recognize what I'm talking about? So the physical body is the most important body in a way we have right now. Everything is leaning on the physical body. That means that all the impressions we get, also when we move with our sensitivity to our friend in New Zealand, all these impressions we only are able to get when they kind of are processed through our nervous system. We can get no impressions which are not processed through the nervous system. So everything is moving from and through the physical. So the more we are connected with our physical body, another way to say it, the more we are incarnated, the more free our awareness and our consciousness is able to move. If we are in a fight, in a struggle with our physical body, partly because of the stress which it gives, but partly because we're not really deeply connected with our senses, with our nerve system, we get much less impressions. And often when we are in a struggle with our physical body, we're in a struggle at the same time with our own existence. We don't trust our physical so well, and we don't trust ourselves so well. We're in a struggle with ourselves. And that means that we get much less impressions, and most of the impressions we get are based on the struggle we have with our own physical body. I'll just give an example. Insecurity, we say it's something psychological. But basically insecurity is part of our physical makeup. Like anger, like fear. Fear and anger are part of our physical makeup. So our emotions, our instincts are part of our physical makeup. Jealousy is part of our physical makeup. That means if we die, we're liberated from almost all the fear, almost all the anger, almost all the insecurity, almost all the jealousy. Yeah.
Why do you say almost?
Because there is in our consciousness, there is a memory, I think, at least shortly after we die, of the conflicts we had. So there is this kind of memory of, we can have, when we look back at, 2 years ago, and you were in Disneyland, and you were going down on the roller coaster, and you have a memory of how fearful you were. You understand? It's not the same, it's the memory, it's a reflection. But your body was producing at that moment the real fear, which is different. So we have a memory of fears we have. And if we have a strong fear for the fear, then the memory of the fears we have, we recreate the fear. Because we have a fear that the same fear could come back, and that kind of gives an obsession with the fear, and we recreate it, and that's when we really suffer the same fear as the memory of the fear, because it could happen every moment again. And that's a little bit how our mind is working. But the memory of the fear is a kind of reflection of the reality as how it has been. The body will not create exactly the same fear again, or the same intensity of fear. So that's more the memory, that's more consciousness remembering or fear. So that will be there. A memory of the fear which was there, a memory of the anger which was there. But not the source, the amplifier of the fear and the anger, which is the physical body in a way. So when we die, there is a kind of liberation. There is less fear. So when we are in a struggle with our physical body, what we do is that we pull our energy in areas which are beyond the physical. But with this, we disconnect partly from the physical. And the physical body is a little bit like a dog, a young dog. So, if you have a young dog, the young dog needs attention all the time. If you don't give the dog attention, it will start to chew your furniture. And that's a little bit with the physical as well. We need to be there. If we are not there, then we are surprised by the reactions of the physical. We don't feel it coming, we're not really connected to our emotions, to our feelings. We get these little shocks of things happening at once without really knowing why it's happening, how it's happening, where it's coming from. So what I'm talking about is the interaction between something which is less physical and something which is more physical. This is our awareness, our consciousness, and our physical. So the awareness and the consciousness by itself, what I try to move to our sensitivity, to also other senses we have, is able kind of, to move beyond the physical. It's more energetic.
This is part of the death process too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of the...
I'm hearing it for some reason.
Yeah, it's also part of the death process. Basically, when we get born, we are born in the physical realm. Then, in that period till we die, the physical realm is all what it is about. We're kind of plonked here, and we can ignore it. We can do as if it doesn't exist, but we end up in the physical anyhow all the time. Either in a struggle with the physical or a deep relaxation in the physical reality as it is. So, a lot of work what we're doing, basically, connected with inner growth generally, or connected with life generally, is coming to peace with our physical existence. There is such a incredible resistance. This is how we talk about the physical, how we think about the physical. And I'm not talking only about appearances, but I'm talking about being here. Being fully alive in the moment, in the physical. And when there is this deep surrender to the physical body, we move beyond conflict. Every conflict has a reflection in how we are able to connect with the physical body. Hence, it makes sense, to do things like gymnastics, yoga, which is all kind of, moving and developing consciousness around and inside the physical. It helps to learn to relax, to learn to know the physical to the depth. So the second layer of our build-up, which is very close to the physical. It's connected to the physical, and when we die, it also, like the physical, will be absorbed by the planet we're living on. And that's the etherical body. And yesterday we talked already a little bit about the etherical, that, the organs in the etherical body are the chakras. And a big part of what the chakras are doing is that they kind of, are guiding information. Energy is information. They're guiding information from outside inward to the nerve system, and they're guiding information from inside the nerve system outside in the environment. So if we say I love you, then the heart chakra activates if we really have the feeling, and there's this feeling of love which is, brought outwards. And then we are able to sense this love of another person, which is pleasant. And this atmosphere of love we sense is quite unique. The love of Georgie is unique. Like, my love is unique, it's different. It's love, we recognize it's both love, but the love of each person is unique, has a very specific, unique flavor. And that's partly because, if there is this big source of love, to say it like this, because I don't think it's our love or it's my love. It's love moving through when there's an opening. So if this big source of love, when it falls through the different layers of our makeup, it gets a flavor with it which is unique. So part of this flavor is connected with it falling through the etheric, through the chakras. So the etheric body is important in guiding information from outside to inside and inside to outside. And when we talk about information, we're talking about energy, about atmospheres. And this information, this energy, this atmosphere spheres is translated through our physical nerve system into impressions. And this translation into impressions, and this also the etheric plays a big role, because we translate things into impressions according to what is already known, what is already experienced. So when we hear a story of somebody, or something is happening, or we see a painting, or we hear some music, or there is a certain ray of sunlight falling through a tree, and we see it, what we do basically is that we relate to it according to things we know already. To place it into an environment inside ourselves, we're able to contain it. Because if we don't know how to place it, we don't know how to contain it. You recognize what I'm talking about? So new impressions are always a little bit shocking. If you never had this impression before, it's a little bit shocking because you don't know how to relate to it, how to place it. And that's not only that we want to be in control mentally. Even when you are able to surrender to it, it's a little bit shocking. And in a way a good shock, because it makes you very, very awake. If you travel to a culture and a country you've never been before, part of the fun there is that you're so awake, you're so alert, so much impressions and new things coming forward. And that draws you totally into being alive in the moment. And partly we have to be there to be able to contain it, to place it into a structure we are able to contain. So, and we do this according to our own experience and our own memory. And this is so much connected with how we are using the senses. So the etheric and the chakras have an incredible influence in how we are able to use our senses, how we get things. If we have a bad experience with trees and we go to an area where there's a lot of trees, our experience will not be very pleasant. You understand? We will look at the trees with the eyes of the bad experience we had. We will hear the trees with the ears of the bad experience we had. You recognize what I'm talking about?
If we had a bad experience with trees.
Yeah.
Or anything.
Or anything.
Right. It will relate to it in that way.
Yeah, we will relate to this in that way. So there's already, or we are already colored in how we perceive the trees. Yeah. And of course when I say trees, we all start to laugh because, who has a bad experience with trees? But you can replace it for men, for women, for dogs, for snakes, for cars, for salesmen, whatever. It's basically how we perceive the world is according to the experiences we had in the past. And that's also how we associate people. We see a person and we say, okay, she looks a little bit like. Oh, she is just like. Or he looks like. And even with names, the sound of a name. Oh, that's a Will. And that's a Richard. Richard is different from a Will. Maybe you will start to relate with a Richard, but never with a Will. Or the other way around. The sound of the name already kind of, gives an association. And then it's sometimes shocking when you see this Will, and this Will is behaving like a Richard. All of this, our etheric is playing a big role. It's not only the brain and the imprint in the brain, but it's also the etheric. The etheric, basically, when you look to it, is built like a web. A three-dimensional web, and it just moves through the physical. There is enough emptiness in the physical that it can just move through the physical. It's around 2 finger broads around the body, and it moves through the physical. There's organs there. The organs are the chakras, and there's not only the 7 chakras we mainly work with, but there is, when you in India, in the Ayurveda, now there is thousands of chakras which are described. Every little joint has a chakra. so many chakras. And that's also the little bit of confusion between different schools, because some schools say these are the 7 main chakras, and other schools take another set and say these are the 7 main chakras. And of course each school has the feeling that his alignment of chakras is superior over the other alignment of chakras. So that's again an impression, because somebody has to be right. But basically every school is right. It's just a slightly different angle to look at the same thing. And when you look at something from a slightly different angle, you get just slightly different impressions. And that gives slightly different opportunities. So each system is worthwhile to endeavor, if we have the time for it, and to look into. So, this 3-dimensional web, that means that there is a lot of cross points in the web, like a spider web, a little bit like a spider web, but then 3-dimensional. So this 3-dimensional web, there is points where the lines are crossing. And each point where the lines are crossing, it means that's a point where there is a decision possible of how information will move through this web. So it is like a crystal. It's a little bit built like a crystal, if you know how a crystal is built. So in this, crystals, and especially silica, is used to store information. And that's because it's built like a web. And each atom and the movement and between the atoms and how the movement is moving through the crystal, when you look into a chip which is inside your computer, that's able to contain information. It's just the movement of the information of electricity, in this case, the movement of electricity through the glass, because the chip is made of glass, basically, silica is glass, which kind of is reflecting information which is in the chip. So information gives an imprint in how energy is moving through through the glass.
Is the crystal in the liquid of the fascial body the same thing then?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah. So when you look to the etheric, it works like a crystal. It's holding information. It's holding memory. But it does much more. So through the chakras, all information which is not directly moving through the nerve system, like when I push on my leg, then nerves in my leg will respond to it, and they will kind of tell me, give the brain and immediately the information if I push hard, too hard, if it's painful, soft. But if I hold my finger a little bit above my leg and I move it like this, or somebody else does it like what we did with the ID, there is no physical connection, and still you feel an impression. This impression moves through the etheric, through the chakras. We don't have nerves here. So it moves through the etheric to the nerve system, and then we've got the impression that somebody is messing with our energy. So this again, the etheric also, according to our experience, gives a coloring to the energetic impressions we have. The etheric is all the time, the memory we have is all the time in a way communicating with the physical. There is something like physical memory, but the physical memory is leaning on the etheric memory.
Can you say that again?
There is something like a physical memory, But the physical memory is leaning on the etheric memory.
Gotcha.
The etheric memory is absolute. And to enter the etheric memory, what we need is relaxation. So we all know this in a way. I'll give an example. You think about primary school, and then the first thought is, okay, who was the one I was sitting beside? And then you know the name. And this is all quite mental. And this is part also the physical memory. You get an impression, and then if you relax, there's kind of much more a 3D memory coming back, that you start to experience, that you smell, the smell of the classroom you were in, that the atmosphere comes forward, that you at once hear the voice of the teacher again, that impressions like this are coming forward, which are much more alive. So this is the memory of the etheric, it's absolute. So the etheric is kind of an absolute memory in which it has the full color experience, and not only what you experienced, but also what was the impact of you on others and how others experienced you. There's a lot of information collected in the etheric. And we use this. We go back in our memory and we try to feel what was the impact of us on the other, to experience that. This is all possible. So when you look to the etheric, then in the etheric, you have all this is a crystalline structure, and there's all this kind of connections, these lines. And in some areas, these lines are coming together, they're coming very close together, and they kind of form a kind of cable. So, and these cables you see all through the etheric. And they're connected with the nerve system, part of them, and part of them are less connected with the nerve system. And these cables, they are used, for instance, in acupuncture. It's the meridians. We don't really have these meridians in our body, but some parts of the meridians are exactly on top of nerves, and some of them they jump over to another nerve. So these are the etheric connections. And basically, in our school we work with meridians as well, but then with another set of meridians, slightly different as the set of meridians, the slightly different connections. A lot of the points are the same as in acupuncture, but slightly different connections. These are existing streams in the etheric. Then you talk about an etheric stream. And streams are basically highways of information. So the etheric is containing our memory, it's bringing non-physical information to the physical, and physical information, it translates physical information into non-physical information. When we die, this is important to understand. I know it's a lot of kind of information I'm giving. When we die, then the etheric body will absorb into the earth etheric body. And the earth etheric body is organizing the information of everything what was alive in a very precise way. This is part of the whole development process of inner growth or development of the planet itself.
What about when we're alive? Like we're all in the etheric.
Yes.
Right now, like I feel that here in this
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
Walking through the etheric.
Yes.
Of the planet.
Yeah.
So how does that metabolize? How does that?
So that means that there is a constant kind of, how do you say it, changeover of information between where we are, the etheric of this place, and your own etheric. So there's a constant, anyhow, exchange of information. And an exchange of memory, impressions you get, knowledge you get. You know, for some people who are sensitive to stones, when they kind of touch a stone, they can kind of enter the memory of a stone. They get an impression of how long the stone has been there, what happened in the past. Other people have it more with trees or with animals. You know, we get an impression. This is memory which is also exchanged the moment we touch something. Or the earth, the place itself. What happened here before? This is an old place. So it has an impact on the whole atmosphere of the place. And the atmosphere of the place is not so much the etheric, that's the next layer we go to, but it's moving through the etheric.
So what about if you go to, say, a place that has had a lot of battling?
Yeah.
Or, some deceased, there was a war, and you pick up that, is that through the etheric or through another level?
The etheric, the impression from another level, an atmosphere is not really etheric, moves through the etheric to the nerve system, and the etheric is the organizer. The etheric kind of makes a memory file of this atmosphere, of the background of this atmosphere. You know, there's some places where there has been in the past a lot of cruelty, and it's like this cruelty, that's the impression, has been absorbed into the ground, into the earth. It's basically it's a wound sometimes in the earth etheric. And when you come there, then you kind of the dread is oozing sometimes out. This can be very dreadful places. And connected with something which happened in the past. And if you're sensitive to it, often then, your subconscious, which is not really, is less conscious. I don't believe that there is something which is unconscious or subconscious, is less conscious, through the etheric of the place and the information which is coming through your etheric, from the etheric, and from your etheric to the etheric, then what's happening is my English is collapsing. What's happening is that that you start to dream about situations which are really colored by the atmosphere or the memory of the place where you are. I think we all had experiences with this. So there is a constant change of information. So the atmosphere is the next layer. That's the astral. So the etheric is around our body, around 2 fingers broad, and then we have the astral, which is a big balloon around us, or it can be very small. When we are in fear or very depressed, then the astral is drawn very close to the etheric. When we are in love or we feel happy and open, the astral can be immense. It can contain the whole solar system. So that means that we can feel the atmosphere on Venus when we're in love.
All right.
So the atmosphere, that's much more connected with feelings, atmospheres, experience. So when we look to an experience, to a feeling, to an atmosphere, that's not something dead. That's alive. Of course, when we connect with a tree and we can feel the life in the tree, a tree is alive. But when you sit underneath the tree and this special kind of protective, peaceful energy under the tree. This is what I'm talking about. This is an example of an atmosphere. This is moving much more to the astral. When you look to this, this is much more alive even as the tree itself. You recognize it has its own life. Maybe it has been there for a blip, but it has its own life. So spheres have their own intelligence and their own life. So as the astral has its own intelligence and its own life, it's very much alive. So also when you start to see energy, people first see the etheric, and that's not such a big deal. But when you start to see and feel the astral, it's kind of shocking because it's so alive. It feels much more alive as the physical. Also, when you look to the etheric has a certain vibration which is more refined as the physical. It moves through the physical. The astral can be a whole different layers of atmosphere. It can be an angry atmosphere, which is a much lower vibration, for instance, as the atmosphere of, for instance, Jesus, which is a very high vibration. The atmosphere of love is a higher vibration as the atmosphere of fear. So in the astral there's this build-up of all these different atmospheres. And we carry these atmospheres around ourselves. And we influence each other with this. There's a direct influence. Atmospheres are live, they're strong, they have an influence on the nerve system and an influence also on how we react, how we are part of it. If you're in a group of people and at once there is this atmosphere of rage and anger, it's very difficult not to move with the group in some destructiveness. You recognize what I'm talking about? You're walking in a group of people and at once there's this atmosphere of some injustice is happening. This is not allowed. So let's do something about it. We lose our normal mind in it. We come to do things which we lose ourselves in the emotion, in the atmosphere which is built up. And this can be for the good or for the bad, both. So partly why we work in groups here is that we build an atmosphere which is really, we do it all together, which is really supportive for a whole process of development. And we say that's for the good. I hope so. We understand in this, we built an atmosphere which is really supportive for all of us to open up and to kind of, to start a process to go inside and to recognize things more. So atmospheres can be really supportive or they can be really destructive. Both is there. And they color us. They color our impression. It's a total difference in how you feel, what kind of impressions you get, how open you are, how relaxed you are. For most people, if they are in nature or they are in New York City, you act different, you feel different. You recognize what I'm talking about? From house to house. Some houses you have a feeling, okay, here I can relax. So your whole nerve system is reacting to it. And that's part through the etheric, two associations, what you associate with it. What I said before. So atmospheres have a big influence. They contain a lot of information. They're colored by the past. And we associate it with it through the past. We react on each other according to atmospheres.
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
So effect of someone's astral movement towards the physical.
Yeah.
And I'm curious because when my dad was dying, he physically couldn't move, and I was sleeping in his bed, and he would come in and tickle my feet.
Yeah.
And he was mischievous, so I'm sure he thought that was funny, but
Which it was.
After I understood what was going on.
Yeah.
So his astral was affecting my physical. How would you say it that way?
No, it's yeah. So there's different forms. Some people are able to leave the body, and partly when you leave the body, you take the astral with you. The etheric and the physical stay behind. But it's not really the astral which is doing it. The astral taking with it, the astral projection, is basically you project your astral somewhere else. But what is doing it is the one who's projecting the astral somewhere else. Yeah. And that's much more connected with the next body, with the mental body.
Okay. Got it.
You understand? And then how do we do it? By imagination again. And in how much we're able to surrender ourselves to the imagination, the more we're able to project ourselves in another place. So your father in a way was imagining that he was tickling your feet, and if you go deeply into the imagination, then the imagination, you feel your feet, you feel that you're touching them, and the other gets the impression that he's touched as well. And again, we can use this for the good, or we can use this for the bad. And of course, the more conscious we are, the more we are aware what we're doing in our imagination. But we're playing with it all the time. We're much more one as we think that we are. Say that you're in love with somebody, and you're really in love with somebody. And then you imagine that you're kissing this other person. You're laying in your bed and you cannot stop imagining that you're together, you're walking on the beach and you're holding hands and you so much want this. Oh, and all this imagination, you're totally touching all the time and being together with this other person. And if you're lucky, then the other person really likes this. And that means that the person also gets in love with you. Or maybe the person was already in love with you and is fantasizing about walking on the beach together with you, and you kind of just link into whatever is there. But if you see what's happening energetic, there is a togetherness already building energetic. We're touching each other, there is a togetherness. The same is happening when we think negative about a person, when we kind of imagine that we will cut a person to pieces, or that we're so angry we want to hurt a person. We're imagining this. So in a way we're touching the person with negativity at that moment, and we can feel this as well. It's not the end of the world, and it's not a problem, because we're doing it all the time, all the way, in all different ways, constantly. So it's not something to repress, suppress, it's not a problem. Because the physical is so strong, we get a slight impression, and it's up to us to kind of to ignore this impression, or kind of to go deeply into it, or get obsessed by it. So people who have less connection with the physical body are more vulnerable to impressions which are there from others. And these are people who kind of, build stories like, when you have a negative thought, it will destroy me, and don't think about me negative, don't think at all, and, and you did this to me, and you did that to me. There's an open psychic, but there is not the connection with the physical in a way to control it, to contain it, to let it go. It will just go. It's not important. It's important to understand that all the time, through the etheric, we get millions of different impressions. You know, if I can hear the insects outside, the birds, I can even feel birds flying behind my back. You know, there is a car just passing by. There is weather, there is some clouds gathering there. All of these impressions are there all the time. Plus the impressions, you know, of all the people who are sitting here. And especially Georgie. What does she think about what I'm telling? Oh shit. It's the authority of my life.
Can I ask a question?
But we filter it. That's important to see, you know, if we're well connected with our physical, we filter it. We filter out the impressions which are important at that moment for us. If we're less connected with the physical, if there's more blocks, then it's more difficult to filter. So we get too much impressions, we don't know exactly, and we start to kind of, instead of centering in the physical and relaxing in the physical, we start to grasp impressions to try to center us around this, or to averse impressions to try to center around ourselves around this. You recognize what I'm talking about? And this is where we get in trouble a little bit. But that's not a reality. Everything is there all the time. Yes?
So what I'm hearing you say is that we are constantly receiving impressions, and then depending on possibly whatever issues we're still carrying, we can relate it to that impression. We can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
And then another thing I wanted to say is, when you're sharing, what I'm also getting is that using intention and feeling, like you were saying with the lovers coming together, that's the way how magic is used.
Absolutely.
Right? So you're starting to create these connections, energetically and physically through the physical body, and then also kind of sending ideas through that to create something, and then all of a sudden somebody doesn't even know, and they come in and it's like, oh my God. It's kind of how voodoo is done.
It's a kind of how voodoo is done, how we drink Coca-Cola advertisement. It's basically, voodoo is not so much different from, marketing. It's also that how our mind is working, and we come to this much more to the depth, but if we repeat something often enough, it becomes a truth. And so if your parents are telling you very often that you are too vulnerable, too sensitive to be really able to deal with this rude world, at a certain moment you believe it. It becomes true. You form yourself according to the truth you're hearing. It has an incredible influence. So we're all formed by kind of truth given to us by authorities, impressions of others. And that's the same magic. This is the same voodoo.
Yeah, it's happening all the time.
It's happening all the time, and we do it to others all the time. We are so free by giving impressions to others and telling, others what and who they are. It's true, isn't it?
Yes.
Especially to your loved ones.
When you're describing the dilemma of the empath, it sounds like the empath is so connected out here.
Yeah.
They're unstructured. I'm hearing you say we're less structured physically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so we lose ourselves very easily.
I think you were saying that the more grounded we are in the physical, the more we occupy the physical, the more we're able to relax with the communication that happens
Yes.
out here.
Yes.
And
Without
the less
losing
we're in the
ourselves
physical,
in
the
that
more it will
information.
affect us.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Choices.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
The opposite.
yeah, that's it. Yeah. So we lose ourselves in all these atmospheres, basically, very easily. But the more you're connected with the physical, the more you're centered in the physical, the more you're able to see it's just an atmosphere. It's connected also with, by giving this atmosphere authority over what and who you are. It's in our language, anger is an atmosphere. And instead of to say I experience anger, I feel anger, we say I am anger, I am angry, I am fear, I'm fearful. you understand? This is already reflecting a very deep identification with effects, not with the cause.
So this is always something I work with when I work with clients is in the state of non-duality, someone comes into my office and so my question is, if they're feeling fear and it runs through my body, am I feeling their fear?
Yeah.
Or is it activating or reflecting my own fear?
Yeah.
Both.
Yes. And
So what the hell do I do with it?
Learn to relax with fear.
yeah, allow it. Just let it run through you and look at it and learn from it and see, understand what fear it is. Recognize what you recognize in the other, because it's also empathy. To feel the fear of the other, and you see, okay, I understand it, and this is connected with this fear in me, which is also kind of activated by it. So to come to a deeper understanding, what this fear means in the life of the other person. And again, when we work with people, we work through empathy. So, it's horrible if you come to a person who doesn't feel anything of what's going on in you. We know that it's only mental answers, there's no feeling connection, this is not what we want. We want this empathy, we want to have that we want very much from our therapist, that they have a feeling understanding of us. That they feel our despair, our fear, our struggle, our loneliness, our grief. That they're able to relate to the feeling, not only to the idea.
And then sometimes I actually experience it getting stuck in my body.
Yeah, then it's hitting the jackpot.
Say again.
Then it's hitting the jackpot.
Can you explain?
That means that when it gets stuck in your body, that means that there is a contraction of yourself in the same area.
Okay.
And that's an indication that an opportunity to work on it. It will go away by itself after some time, but it's an opportunity to work on it. To look more deeply into it. Where does it touch me? This is not totally free in me. And so that's an opportunity. That's partly why it's so nice to work with people, because it's so good for your own development, your own crew. You see yourself in your own clients, and it's most of the times that you attract clients with the same shit, you have to deal with. That's very negative to say it like this, but it's often like that. Yeah. You have some issue with your father, and at once 3 clients are marching in. Your new clients, all issues with their father. Okay.
Got it.
Thank you, God. Thank you. That's the law of attraction. That we'll talk about that later, how that works. But it's also there, that kind of, that's also a sign that we're all connected. That we're really all connected, also in our processes, in what we need to move through, what we attract and what we are attracted to. So this works through the astral, to the etheric, through the mental, which is the next body layer I like to talk about. The mental, I will not make it too long, but the mental is kind of, is around the head. This is another area, like this. It can be very big, and it can be very small, according, again, the way we are using our thoughts. It's connected with thinking, it's also connecting with our feelings. Thoughts and feelings are very close together. And so the mental is there's a lot of organs in the mental, but part what is in the mental, what's important, is our beliefs. And our beliefs are very important, and I'm not talking about, religious beliefs. Everything what we believe is true about ourselves, about the world, about others. And these beliefs are forming our reality. They're forming also the structure of the etheric. So how information is moving through the etheric is according to our beliefs. So they form really the reality up until how we get impressions and what kind of impressions we get. And this is where we are, when you look to the whole area of beliefs, where we are identifying with the strongest. We identify the strongest, not so much, that you are anger, but what you believe around anger, that's what you are. This is how we identify. That means that if you identify with yourself with beliefs, it's very difficult to change beliefs. You understand? What we believe that we are, it's very difficult to change, because then who are we? And it's difficult to see it at yourself, but look how your beliefs are identifying the people around yourself. We identify each other according to our beliefs, what we believe that the other person is, what we believe how the other person should be. And if the person is not acting according how we believe that he should be or she should be, then the other person is confused. We're not confused. The other person is confused. You're acting strange, you're really confused. You recognize what I'm talking about? Yeah. So we structure reality not only inside ourselves, but also outside ourselves according to our beliefs. So these beliefs are very important. I will not talk about it right now, but in other courses and in other moments we really go to the depth of this. But the mental is very important, connected with thinking and the different layers of thinking. And then we have the last layer of the aura, and that's the causal or the Buddhic layer, which is also very important, and that's a layer which is around us. Like you have this picture of Da Vinci, you remember, standing like this, and then there is this circle around, and this circle is very specific, is a layer of the aura, and this is called the Buddhic layer or the causal layer, and this is a layer where you can find our qualities, the qualities we took with us in this life. So when we are using the qualities, the quality expression energy is moving in the first place through the heart and is expressed through the heart chakra. We talk about this later, but it's important to understand these qualities are called the outer light.
The what?
The outer light. It's a
outer light.
Outer light.
Outer light.
Yeah.
Outer.
Outer, yeah. From outside yourself, the outer light.
Mm-hmm.
So we will be working with the qualities and the quality layer of the aura as well, but not right now. Maybe it's good to have a little break.
Mhm.